Managing negative reactions to change. Change is a constant these days, and the size of change is getting greater and greater as we go forward. And therefore, all of us, in some regard or another, are going to be concerned with managing change, and in particular, managing people's reactions to change. And those aren't always positive. In fact, much of the time, they can be very negative. So I want to take you through an 8-step process to manage people through what we call the negative change curve. It starts with stability. In other words, people are going about their day-to-day work, their life, in a situation that is a norm for them, they're accustomed to it, and they're quite happy and satisfied with it. And then you come along and you communicate a change. And the first thing that happens, following on from this state of stability, is that they will probably go into a situation where they experience shock. They're not expecting it. It's come out of the blue. They're confused by it. And they're not at all happy because perhaps they don't see the real reason for it. And they visibly show shock. And moving on from that, they go into the next step, which is what we call denial. Disbelief. This can't be the case. This won't happen. There's no need for this. It'll run out of steam. And basically what people are doing is putting their heads in the sand, and they are firmly believing that this is just not going to be the case going forward. They're in denial. But then, of course, there is further evidence of the change. And then this brings about the next stage in the process, which very often is anger, blaming, fighting. This is unjust, this is unfair, it's not necessary. People feel frustrated because it's not going to go away. They feel hurt because their situation is going to be disturbed, perhaps a very great deal. And they blame those for introducing it, but also they blame people perhaps who are nothing to do with it. And they out their emotions, very often out of work, on family and friends. So that's the stage we call anger, blaming, fighting. This then leads to another step. The next step is bargaining, in which they will try perhaps to come back and bargain the size of the change, the degree of change, the scale of change, and try and limit it, and perhaps try and defer it. And of course, it doesn't go away, and this is an attempt to try and moderate the degree of change, and often that's not going to happen. That then leads to depression or mourning. This can be a physical, almost, withdrawal from the job. People don't engage. They sit on their own. They're quiet. They are quite definitely in a state of mourning the past and not really welcoming the future. The full weight of the change at this point has sunk in, and the reality of the future has also sunk in. The next step is what we would call testing. In other words, people return to the thought about the change that is happening, and they test their understanding of it, particularly as it relates to them. And they're beginning to put out feelers as to possibly I could cope with this, what actually is going to be involved in it. And then they go through this testing phase when they embrace the change finally, and they will probably come into a state which we call reluctant acceptance. In other words, they still are not going to like it, but they have got to a point of accepting it and understanding they're needing to be involved in it. What's your role at each step of the process? Well, at the start, expect the shock and try and offer the benefits of the change to the individuals right at the outset. If they're going to go through denial and disbelief and anger, blaming, fighting, let them express those emotions, try and be empathetic, try and be supportive, and try and be on hand to receive those emotions and be available to your people as they work through this very difficult part of the cycle. When they get into bargaining, you have to stand firm on the issues and not back off and not try and get into a compromised situation. After all, the change is fixed, it's going to happen, and they need to understand that. In mourning, accept that people are going to be withdrawn, they're not going to contribute very much, and just give them the space to go through this period. When they come into testing, try and give them as much time as you can to let them know what it is going to mean to them, how you're going to train them, develop them, support them, help them, be there for them as they go through the change. And then when it comes to acceptance, be it reluctant acceptance, make sure you are there to lead them through into the future and to have them become fully proficient in that future. So that's the negative change curve and how you can expect the different reactions from people at each stage of the curve and how you can bring them through as effectively as you can to accept the change and embrace it in the longer term.